And I wanted to be as raw and real and honest in this book because to me, there's nothing worse than a polished book about grief.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we connect through story. My pain, when you read it, you can be like, it's not the same, but I understand. I didn't know that I could give myself permission to feel it, let alone talk about it.
Today, I have my dear friend Kris Carr with me. She's the New York Times bestselling author of Crazy Sexy Diet and many others, as well as her brand new book. It's not new, it's a year out. I'm Not a Mourning Person. Kris has been seen on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday and more, and she is here today sharing with us the incredible experience of really going to the places that she didn't want to go before and the guidance for those moments when life pulls the rug out from under us, which we have all experienced. So please lean in and enjoy this conversation with Kris Carr. Welcome to Plenty. I'm your host, Kate Northrup, and together we are going on a journey to help you have an incredible relationship with money, time, and energy, and to have abundance on every possible level. Every week, we're going to dive in with experts and insights to help you unlock a life of plenty. Let's go fill our cups.
Please note that the opinions and perspectives of the guests on the Plenty podcast are not necessarily reflective of the opinions and perspectives of Kate Northrup or anyone who works within the Kate Northrup brand.
Hey, Kris, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Gorgie.
I'm so happy. Okay. So I've known you for a long time. I don't know if you remember when we met, but I do. And it was at Donna Karen's Urban Zen. And it was at the same time that Gabby introduced me to you and Latham, and you were like sitting in the back of some kind of wellness event there. Anyway, so I'll never forget it. And over the years, I have witnessed you, and that was like, I don't know, at least 15 years ago, if not more.
Yeah.
Over the years, I have really witnessed you have this beautiful evolution to primarily talking about the body in the 3D, like what we put into our bodies in terms of what we eat, which is super important. And, you know, and like more of the 3D to really like moving into the inner workings, not just the organs, but like all the other stuff in there. And it's been beautiful.
Thank you.
And this book, I'm Not a Mourning Person, really took us to a place that I felt like as a longtime reader of yours and also as a longtime friend of yours, it was new.
Oh,
Like this book about your heart. And really beautiful. So
Thank
first of all, I
you.
just want to say congratulations. It's really brave and beautiful.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much, honey. And we have known each other a long time. And, you know, it's funny because I often say that the first part of my career, I was really focused on what you're eating.
Yeah.
And now I'm focused on what's eating you.
Yes.
Right. And to me, that's what holistic wellness is all about. And starting with my diet and my lifestyle was really easy because when I was newly diagnosed as a cancer patient 21 years ago, I was terrified and, you know, I wanted some sense of control. Yeah. And so I could control how I was taking care of myself. I could control my food. I could control, you know, just some of the basics in a world that was so chaotic. And once I started to feel a little bit better, it's like you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And when you're ready, you go to the places that really scare you, but those places are where, you know, the cliche freedom lies. And it's unfortunately, it's true because I've tried every way to avoid it, to hustle, to disprove it, to rebel against it. And I'm here to tell you, it's true.
You just got to feel.
You got to go in.
So you were diagnosed with cancer when you were 31.
Yes.
Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
What year?
2003.
Great. I'm like, I don't even know what time is. Okay,
Long time ago.
2003. And you have, tell for folks who don't know who you are, which would be hard to imagine, but it's possible. What have you've been a cancer thriver for
21 years now. So I live with stage 4 cancer. I have a rare sarcoma And my disease can be slow growing or aggressive, and it can change at any time. So I've just been on a watch and wait, let cancer make the first move technical approach, but a watch and live, what can I do to participate in my well-being empowered approach. And that's what I've been practicing for 21 years. And my practice has changed over time as I have changed, as my life has changed. But I teach very basic principles because I think that so many of us get caught in the shiny object syndrome with the latest trend, hack, fad, whatever, the influencers are doing, and we lose sight of the basics. And so I teach people how to create a very basic wellness plan that they can come back to, like a home base that's forgiving and flexible and does have freedom in it, but has those basics of lifestyle medicine that is the essential, components to a sustainable wellness practice.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, you and I, like, one of the things I love about you is, like, you and I have pretty different, like, spiritual views. Because I remember we were talking. Well, first of all, I'll just ask you a straightforward question. What do you think about God? Just an easy one to answer.
Listen, let's go straight in. I have a fickle and feral faith.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was raised by a bunch of wildlings, and I was allowed to kind of go my own way and really figure out what spirituality meant for me. Yeah. And over the years, it's meant many different things. And there have been times when I felt very connected to a force greater than my knowing. And there's been other times where I haven't. And I think the freedom that I allow myself is not to feel the stress or to push myself to believe something that may not always resonate. And I think faith is something that can change and evolve over time, especially if you allow yourself to pursue it without any dogma or any judgment. I also have I get a lot of connection and reward from learning how to appreciate my own company. And I'd say that's probably been the greatest source of my practice, like that, the greatest result of a practice where, we come here alone, we leave here alone. There's going to be so many times along the way where we're terrified, where we don't know what to do, where we're lost and we're out of sorts, and even out of sorts with ourselves. And to be able to come back to that place where you truly are, your own heartstone has been so profound for me. It's especially, it started outside of my oncologist's office, quite honestly. It's those moments where I'm there to find out, okay, has it gotten aggressive? Has it changed? Is now the time? There's still no cure. Like, what's going to happen where that deep practice of self-friendship was born? Like, hey, you know what? We're going to go in together. No matter what happens, I got your back. We'll figure it out like we always have. And I love you. Let's go do this. Let's go rock this, kid.
Yeah. Yes, it's like how you're talking to yourself, how you're relating to yourself.
100%. Because for me, I mean, each and every one of us, you're going to spend the most time on this planet with you. If you don't like you, we got a problem. You can pray to anybody you want to pray to, okay? But if you don't like you, we got some deep work to do. Yeah. And I think that it's okay because there's going to be times in your life, perhaps, where you don't like you.
Yeah.
And that is okay, but how can we then tend to that relationship?
So not when you, because it was not one moment in time, but as you've made that transition to, you started out with your career with what are you eating, and it's transitioned so that you're also talking about what's eating you, although you were talking about that before, but it's like a little bit more, right? What were some of the things that were eating you that you were not wanting to tend to? Of course, you talk about them in the book, so I'm not, I'm not like spilling any.
It's okay.
But what were some of those things that you were like maybe wanting to like work to avoid or, because we all do it, right? Like we all have our mechanisms that we're like, I would rather not go there. I'm going to work. I'm going to drink. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to date inappropriate people. I'm going to, we got our stuff. So like, and I think probably at the end of the day, those things we're wanting to avoid are universal, which is why your book is so good. But like, what were some of that just for you?
Grief, trauma, and rage.
Okay. Small stuff.
Yeah. Really small stuff. It's interesting because I started to write this book during the pandemic, and I was on another journey, and this was the journey of my chosen father's diagnosis and the anticipatory grief of knowing that he wasn't going to make it, but he was still here, and being very connected to my parents and also, very present for that period, very intentional about that presence. And I knew that to write this book, I would have to go to the places that scared me. And the truth is that I think our publishers probably wanted me to write something different because it's a big topic. And a lot of times when people write about grief, I think the assumption is that, people won't buy that book because even if you are grieving, it's too hot to touch, And so I thought long and hard about that. Well, maybe I could write a cheerleading, you got this, you're awesome, book, which I still might write.
Yeah.
But nothing in my body could do it because it just wasn't where I was. But also I knew I wanted to go someplace deeper. Mm-hmm. And so I tend to tackle difficult topics. It's part of who I am, right? I write about cancer. I write about vegetables. You know what I mean? For some people, that's terrifying, And then this book is about the big messy emotions that happen when life falls apart. So when I started the process, I realized that there truly was a hole in my education. Mm. And even though I'd been in the wellness world for 2 decades and have had the privilege of speaking on some of the greatest stages with the greatest people, I was avoiding, as you said, hustling harder, doing all of my own things that I do to avoid the big stuff. And grief was number one. And my therapist said something interesting. She said, when the grief train pulls into the station, it brings all the cars. It brings the stuff that you thought you were over, the stuff that, how does this still trouble me? I thought I grew beyond this. Yeah. And it brings up past traumas too, that maybe have been buried in your body or buried in the bones of your psyche, the graveyard of your psyche. And it's all coming up for healing for your own benefit. And what I didn't understand, and each chapter in the book is kind of focused on a different behavior or experience that you may happen when the rug gets pulled out from under you. What I didn't understand was some of the other trickier emotions that would also come up when I was brave enough to invite these feelings in. And like, for example, one of the chapters is on rage. Yeah. And
I loved that chapter.
You did? Thank you.
I mean, it was spicy. It was very spicy.
Very spicy.
Yeah.
It was scary to write, actually.
Yeah, I bet.
It was very vulnerable, very transparent. I wanted to be as raw and real and honest in this book because to me, there's nothing worse than a polished book about grief or
that
a polished
very hard
book
to read.
About pain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we connect through story. My pain, when you read it, you can be like, it's not the same, but I understand. I didn't know that I could give myself permission to feel it, let alone talk about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was, the night before it came out, it was one of those books where this was my 7th one. And there's only been 2 where I'm like,
really? What was the other one?
My first one, because I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean?
Sense. Yeah.
And it was also called Crazy Sexy Cancer Tips, and everybody was like, don't call it that. And I was like, no, I will.
I'm going to. Yeah.
And that was also a very raw and real book. It's sort of like you go back to the beginning. Yeah. And that's what I did.
So I grew up in a waspy household where like we just didn't like do rage or yelling or like any sort of like large emotional expression. I know that you and I have like different upbringings, but there's some like similar threads. So why do you think for you, where was that gap in your education? Was it from modeling? Was it just like that wasn't done in your household? What was the deal?
I think it's probably a bit of everything. You know, I think as children, when you don't have words to describe your emotions and you don't have those words, and maybe you grow up in an environment where you're walking on eggshells and you're scared to rock the boat and you know, mess with the energy in the house that's already quite tenuous, then you're very worried about how your emotions will be perceived, and you don't even know how to describe them, as I said. You bring that through to adulthood. So for me, it's always been the big difficult conversations that I will shy away from. Or when I'm flooded by emotion, I'm very inarticulate. And it brings me back to that place. It's like we have to reparent ourselves. And even if our parents did the best that they could, we all have to reparent ourselves in some way, you know? You modeled it the other day when you and I were talking on the phone, and I said I hadn't gotten back to you, and I was, you know, filled with all the things that I have to do, just like we do, you know what I mean? And I said, oh my gosh, I feel so guilty. And you had made space for me to come on the show, and you had to move some people around. And I said, I feel so guilty. And you said, I'm so sorry you feel that. You know, but you didn't try to fix it. I'm sorry you feel that. You didn't say you have no reason to feel guilty. You just literally, I thought about that on drive here. You held the space for me to share that I felt guilty. And you held that, and, you know, and then we dealt with it, and you made space for me. But if you couldn't have fit me in, we wouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? And it was so refreshing. It's those little moments and those little opportunities throughout the day, not just the big conversations. Like I was adopted by my biological, by my chosen father, and rejected by my biological father. And so, you know, you think about the big moments in life, the big rejections, the big abandonments, the big ruptures. And those conversations, of course, we shy away from them because they put us into fight, flight, freeze. It's literally a mental and full body experience. And so we'll do whatever we can to keep ourselves safe, right? But I'm not talking just about the big moments. I'm talking about the little moments that make up a friendship, a relationship, healthy relationship to your own emotions, your ability to articulate what's happening for you. These are huge victories. And I think that so many of us, we don't stop to recognize how important it is when we're brave enough to do it, let alone to have a friend or a relationship who's willing to meet us. You know, it's always, to me, in the details of the little moments.
One of the things that story you shared actually makes me think of, one of the things I love about the way you write this book is it is not tied up in a pretty bow. And it really is, it's a very healing book to read. So I won't say it's not helpful. It's like actually hugely helpful. And in fact, right when you sent me the galley, my cousin, who's like my sister, lost her mother unexpectedly. So I was able to read the book and then pass it to her immediately. And it was very, as someone who loves someone who is grieving, it felt so good to be able to pass something along that I thought could meet her where she was, because we don't know what to say when people are going through something, right? And what I love is that this your body of work around loss and grief and is not about fixing it. It really is about being with it. And that takes a lot of courage because we really want to fix to make it go away. And I'm curious, what are some of the practices that you leaned into when the grief train rolled into the station with the rage train and like all the trains, to actually stay and feel perhaps some of the feelings that had been around for a while that there wasn't space for before? Like, what were some of the actual things that you did to allow space to feel those things? Not to pretend that that's like a one and done, like obviously it continues.
I mean, it really would depend on what the day called for. You know, I remember when we were talking about dying for the first time, my dad and I, and I was so scared. I didn't know how to talk about dying with somebody who was dying. and we're all going to die. And yet we are walking around totally useless. We're so useless when it comes to death. You know, it's like everybody knows what to do when a baby is coming. I don't know what to do, but I know how to buy presents.
You are a fucking amazing aunt, though.
Oh, thank you. When they get a little older, like I don't really know what to do with them when they're little, and you could really hurt them by just being, you know, it's just
Babies
really
are
scary.
so much more durable than you think.
I don't know. But there's all of this pomp and circumstance when a kid comes into the world, as it should be, because it's really special. But it's also really special when we leave. But we are domesticated in this grief-phobic, messy emotions of our society. So we institutionalize it, we commercialize it, we put it someplace else because it's too ugly to look at, or it's too terrifying because we're afraid we're going to get it wrong. That's the kind of stuff that I made the intention that no matter how badly I felt, I was not going to do that. And so we started with conversations like my therapist said to start by talking about it, right? So I said, hey, Dad, I don't know if you want to have this conversation. And you know, he's already in the hospice, well, not quite in the hospice stage, but I said, if you want to, I'm here for it, but I want you to know that I'm going to fall apart. Maybe I'm going to say something dumb. Maybe I'm going to cry and feel uncomfortable, maybe. And if all of that's okay, you name the time. And he was like, I'd really love that because it's so lonely because everybody else is moving forward and I'm dying. And I just want to see how everybody's story ends. And I feel like, you know, everybody's speaking quickly and I'm slowing down cognitively. And I would appreciate that. And we wouldn't, you know, in the past, I might have been like, this is too heavy to talk about. I don't want to make the moment depressed. You know what I mean? I don't want to mess with the vibe. Oh, the vibe. Wow. You know, keep it high.
Yeah.
Guess what? You know how you keep the vibe fucking high? You talk about it. Yeah. You talk about what is necessary to speak of. And that to me was such a huge lesson, just even in that simple dialogue. And then we talked about it. And I was incredibly inspired by the conversations that we had. And so get support. I couldn't have done this without my true blues, without my therapist, without movement. Because there's a lot of times where I had to discharge energy and go for a walk or a run or a hike. Even lift some weights, which you inspire me so much. Oh my God, this girl. Oh my God, when you're lifting those big barbells and I'm like this, I'm like, that's amazing. But I did this, you know?
So good. Yeah.
Getting in your body.
Totally.
And then honestly, there's two other tips. There's a ton of tips in the book that kind of help you go through the waves that we'll hit. But going back to what you said earlier is we don't have to fix anything. Yeah. And I love fixing things because I'm a Virgo. I'm very controlling. Like I got the plan and I probably know better than anybody else what needs to happen. At least that's what this brain tells me, which is so false and puts so much work on my plate. Yeah. And so it's like deprogramming and saying, I don't have to fix anything. I just have to listen and be present. Right. And then the other thing is whenever I was truly lost, I would ask myself, well, what would love do? What would love say? How would love respond? And I wasn't always able to do it, but it would be that guiding question that would get me back into a place where I was connected and hopefully doing something positive.
Yeah. And how did walking with your dad through this experience, you know, very closely, how did that impact the way you show up in other areas of your life that also have to do with like grief and loss? You know, I know that you spoke a little bit about your diagnosis in the book and like, obviously like any major thing in life comes with, any yes comes with no's, and any new path also comes with, like, it all, like we're losing things all the time, right? But we're not usually present to that. So yeah, I'm just curious, like how it helped you relate to other areas of your life.
I'm more stress hardy. I'm definitely more stress hardy, and I'm less reactionary. I'm less triggered by stress and catastrophe. It really was a grounding experience, but also I think it gave me the opportunity to deal with some of my own trauma from my own diagnosis. And, as somebody who's talked about her diagnosis for 20 years and used it as a springboard for the teachings that I do, it can become very like nonchalant part of everyday.
Totally.
It's not something I'm scared of talking about. And yet there was definitely a much deeper reservoir of sadness for the life that I thought I was going to have but didn't have. Even though I very much love my life, there was some untended to grief that needed addressing there. And so that was a real gift for me. And I'd say the other thing is that I've noticed that there's moments where we have these big wake-up calls in life, and maybe for some out there it might not be a wake-up call, maybe it's a warning sign, but that there's something up that you have to tend to. Things are not going in the direction you want them to go. For me, it was a full-blown wake-up call. But as time goes on, it's easy to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Because life happens, and great things happen, and change happens, and busyness happens. And we can't stay in this constant place of consciousness, enlightenment. We're going to go in and out. And I think this experience woke me up again. And instead of punishing myself or being difficult on myself or judging myself for going back to sleep, I realized sleeping and waking is just about shrinking the amount of time between the two. And what I had gone back to sleep about was impermanence. Truly, because so many of us have more days behind us than in front of us. And we all want to have that feeling where we're living fully. We're feeling good in our bodies, in our lives. There's flow. We feel connected, freedom, passion, all of those things. But it's easy to lose sight of what truly lights us up and sort of breathes that life force into us in our everyday mishigas. You know what I mean? I don't think I said that right. Mishigash.
You did. Mishigas.
Gosh or gosh?
Oh, I don't
in the comments.
know.
Let me know.
I'm not fluent in Yiddish.
But it's easy to lose sight. Yeah. And my dad gave me so many wisdom bombs throughout the book, and the fatherly advice ratcheted up as his days wound down. Like make sure you get your oil changed and make sure you trade your car in 50,000 miles. You've been going way too far with that car. Like, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. And I was taking all these notes frantically about all the things, mostly because I just didn't want to miss anything. And so, but one of the things that he said was, we have it all backwards, love. We were sharing a gin and tonic. We were in, I think we were in Martha's Vineyard, and we were just really enjoying this summer break around his birthday. And he's like, I never would have given myself something like this summer break, because like many of us, he owned his own business, and the summer was his busy season. Yeah. And he said, we work so hard for later. For once this is over, then I'll play golf with my brother. Then I'll do all the things once I retire. But all of those summers, I didn't give myself this experience. And here I am dying, and I don't have many more of these experiences. And he said, you have to make your golden years now. And that was the reawakening for me. And what I've been trying to do on every single interview that I've done is pass that wisdom on, because we can weave golden moments into every single day of our lives. And those golden moments add up over time like a beautiful necklace. And that is what makes a life, a fully lived life, or those everyday golden moments.
Yeah. I have seen that shift in you.
Really?
For sure.
Oh.
Like, for sure. That wisdom is absolutely living on in you.
Appreciate
it's
that.
really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm curious, because you are a very successful business owner and because it can be tempting, there's never an end to all the possibilities that we could be creating. There's never an end to the to-do list. Like, there never is. Like, we're going to die with a long to-do list.
So
the
long.
end. That's just going to be what it is.
Yes. So long.
So we're never going to get it all done. And so I'm curious, how has the experience with your dad shifted your relationship to work? I mean, you spoke to it there some, but is there anything else you would want to share about that in your relationship with your business?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's my fertile ground. That's where I go to Naughty Town, USA. That's the place where all the wisdom goes to die.
Amazing. Thank you for your honesty.
It's true. It's like I have seen myself flex it in other areas. And then when I'm conscious and when I have that awareness of like, oh, but this is the place where, you really need to bring this practice. This is the place where you can flex these muscles more. And I think I tend to be somebody who gets into the weeds. I get into the, down. I'm like the janitor with the plunger, and then I grab the golden mic and, and just sort of retraining myself to stay up and really focus on the things that matter and that move the needle, not just for the business, but for our happiness in the business, for the culture. The people that work with me are the people I spend the most time with.
Yeah.
And so when we think about it that way, it's like just like the energy that you bring into a space with somebody who's going through a difficult time or somebody who's dying really matters. The energy that you bring to your business and the people that you work with and the customers that you serve really matters. And if your energy is off, it's depleted, you're running on empty, it's very difficult to create that energy that magnetizes more abundance and more flow and more ease. And so, again, it's just about saying, okay, I'm out of alignment. How do I recalibrate? And you're such a great mentor for me with that, because you are always like, prune, do less. You don't need that. Get rid of that. Don't do that. You know what I mean? And it's such a freedom, because I think, especially in a world that's all about more.
Yeah.
The freedom to do less and to have friends and colleagues who are are very dedicated to that is so smart, because that means we can go deeper,
Right.
with the few things that we do.
Yes.
And I think that that's where the riches are.
It is where the riches are. And we also all do have our own fertile ground where we go to. What did you say?
Naughty Town, USA. Okay, it's a town in the USA. It's called Naughty Town.
Like, we all have our place where we go unconscious. Yeah. And I'm so glad you called yourself out on that. I mean, I certainly can do that in my work life. I can do that in any manner of ways as well. But having friendships that can reflect back and be, like our mutual friend Marie, like she's really good about saying no. She just says no to pretty much everything. And so I always think, I'm like, what would Marie do? She would definitely say no. Yeah. Do I want to do that? I don't know. This is my Naughty Town USA. It's like saying yes to too many things. So I tell you to do less, but then I go turn around and I say yes to too many things. But I'm curious, like you also, like, you keep it tight in terms of your social circle.
Yeah.
You're more of an introvert. And for you, what was helpful during this time of grieving in terms of that tighter circle being supportive? Because as I mentioned before, so I have experienced obviously some loss. I mean, like, I couldn't be human without that, but not a major key player in my life at this point, which is kind of amazing, actually. And my time will come, obviously. But like, as a friend to people experiencing loss, what was the most helpful, supportive thing that people could do, and how could they could be around you at this time?
Just that checking in and not having expectations, because I was so flooded. And honestly, I was flooded for years.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like a couple of weeks later, bounce back. No, grief and love are two sides of the same coin. The more you love, the more you're going to grieve. And there isn't a timeline on it. It softens. Yeah. It definitely softens. But as I'm sharing stories about my dad and, some of the the traumas that I've experienced in my life, emotion's there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of it. And so just having people that would check in, of course, that bring me a lasagna. Just bring me a lasagna.
So just taking notes. So lasagna.
It's very simple. It's those little things. I have a chapter in the book that's called Awkward Times, Awkward People. And it's
so good.
It's the things that we say.
So good.
And sometimes we say weird shit, right? And I've said weird shit, and I'll say it again, right? Because again, we grow up not having language for this. And so I remember, like I talk a little bit about cancer faux pas and grief faux pas too. You know, like I was recently diagnosed. Oh, how long do you have to live?
People said that to you?
Oh, yes. It's like a car crash, you know? It's like rubbernecking. Is that what it's called? Rubber bumping? I don't know what it's called.
Rubbernecking.
Rubber
baby buggy bumpers?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. But it's like you slow down to see if you can see a femur or something. You know what I mean? It's people do it.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
No, I know.
But I think we don't know what to say. And so weird stuff comes out of our mouth. The same thing happens with grief. Yeah. Oh, he's in a better place now. Oh, why are you so sad? It was just a dog. Oh, you'll have another child. Like, you know, all of that stuff. Again, oftentimes we just want to make the person feel better.
Because it's back to the same thing we're trying to fix.
Or we want them to feel like, hey, you know what? I get it. Yeah. So what I'm going to do right now is center myself and make it all about me. Oh, this happened to you? Get a load of this. Listen to what happened to me for 37 hours until you're exhausted. You know, and you're wondering when the conversation is going to come back to you. It's not. And that's exhausting.
So don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? And obviously I'm being cheeky right now.
But it's also accurate. Like, I mean, you are being cheeky, but, you know, cheeky because it's based in truth.
It's truth. And then here's me. This is my problem, right? Because I'm a wellness coach. I'm a thought leader. So get ready for the advice.
Yeah.
Oh, it's coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have to be able to say to somebody who's going through a difficult time, do you want advice?
Yeah.
Or do you want to brainstorm? Or do you just want me to be an ear?
Totally.
Because as my wonderful husband will say when I share advice unsolicited, nobody paid you for that. Nobody was looking for that strategy session. I'm just curious why you think anyone wanted it.
Nobody paid you for that.
You know?
Oh God,
but that comes from my own discomfort.
Yeah.
So we all have our ways. And I'd say it really just comes back to being present, being willing to go to the places that scare us, right? Being willing to sit in places that are difficult with your person, with somebody you care about.
I know. And the thing is, like, because you have had the courage and continue to have the courage to sit in those places of yours, you have become somebody who can sit there with other people. It's like when we are trying to fix, it's because it's our own discomfort and maybe we haven't grown the capacity to sit with it being uncomfortable. And one of the things, when we moved to Miami, our oldest was just having a hell of a time, and she would wail sometimes for hours at bedtime like she had been possessed. And it was so intense, but trying to fix it for sure made it worse. And so I would just sit with her and rock her as she would just like scream and say one word over and over again. I mean, it was like hell. I mean, it was awful. However, I really was like, could find a place in there that I could just be. And I was able to like feel a literal physical feeling of an increased capacity to just sit with discomfort. And I'm curious, did you have that similar feeling during this of like you actually can feel physically more space
At times.
for discomfort sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever I want to know more about something, it always starts with curiosity for me. And then creativity kicks in after that. And so it's a great way to be sneaky too, because you can trick yourself. You know what I mean? If you know that there's a place in your life where you could use some growth, get curious about it. And that curiosity is what led me to really go, okay, there are a lot of emotions that I actually don't have a lot of literacy around. And first of all, what are emotions?
Yeah.
And it just came back to this idea that our emotions are energy, and energy needs to go someplace. If it doesn't move, it becomes stagnant. Our emotions are also information. Yeah. And yet so many of us want to amputate our emotions so that we can fit in. And we want to amputate our emotions, but in the same breath, we want to be whole. And so you can't amputate any part of yourself and expect to be whole. It's like if so I have tumors as you know, in my liver and both of my lungs. If I was like, you are unbecoming, okay? You are inappropriate. You need to go. I can't, it doesn't work that way, right? There's a lot of information that if I get curious about my tumors, they can teach me things. Same thing with our emotions. And so I've grown the capacity by staying connected to that curiosity and by also learning how to self-soothe more. I know you are very good at this because I see you on Instagram and I'm always so excited. Like when you float with people, do you know what I mean? Like what is going on? It's just amazing. There's people floating in your arms. You know how to regulate the nervous system. But guess what? It's a superpower to know how to regulate your nervous system. So the fact that you can sit there with P and help her regulate her nervous system, there's no doubt in my mind that when the shit hits the fan internally for you, you also know what to do to care for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. And if you don't,
and if I don't, I phone a friend.
You phone a friend and you come back in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are some of those self-soothing things that you turn to? I know we're all different and we all have our own things that we do, but I'm just curious, like what are some, I know you're a meditator and a mover.
I'm a meditator and a mover. I'm also a journaler. I often ask myself questions. How do you feel? What can I do for you? What's happening, sweetheart? Are you okay?
Yeah.
You know how much I love you? You're doing a great job. I know it doesn't feel that way. I know you feel like you totally fucked up, but you didn't. And you know what? The sun is going to rise tomorrow and it's all going to be over. You're fine. Would you like a tea? Would you like a wine? What would you like, darling? How can I help you? A little chocolate?
So good.
It's literally, I just speak to myself.
Do you say it out loud or inside your head?
Sometimes
out loud.
I walk down the street saying it and people are a little taken aback.
Yeah.
Like, is this person in need?
It's so sweet.
Yes, I do it in the mirror. I do it on my walks. I do it, in my journal.
Wow. I love that.
Brian will say, like, who are you talking to? Oh, never mind.
You say never mind?
He says. He'll catch a
Because he's
whiff.
Oh, I'm aware of what's happening. Oh,
she's just coaching herself.
Doing self-coaching, honey. Do you ever talk to Brian that way?
A little bit, but he's not really for it.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like his vibe.
Occasionally, I'll be like, what's on your heart? Do you want to talk about it? And he's like, no, I put everything in the man jar on my shelf and I close it up.
Oh my God.
I'm like, should we open the jar? He's like, no, we shouldn't open the jar.
Here. All is well.
But occasionally, I have actually taken that advice. Like sometimes when it's just a bridge too far, he'd be like, put it on the man shelf for now.
I actually
close that up right now.
I think that we can absolutely swing the pendulum. Maybe not you. I will speak for myself. I can swing the pendulum too far into the feelings.
Too much feelings.
And I think that I could absolutely take a tip from Brian. And Mike is over there shaking his head, yes, on set. I could absolutely put it in the jar and just throw it up on the shelf. And just like, I think I was on a psilocybin journey when I got the download that
it's good.
I need to just because sometimes my feelings come with a lot of thoughts. And I think, so I'm curious. I got this download about especially when I'm with my husband, I need to be less talking, more feeling, and less thinking, less thinking, more feeling. But I find that sometimes talking about my feelings amps up a thing versus actually feeling them. That's actually two different things. Can you talk about that in your experience of your emotional journey over the last couple of years becoming emotionally literate?
That's so good. That I've never been asked this question. I'm still piecing it together. So let's see what comes out.
Great.
Yes, I can get myself into a lather. Okay. Because sometimes it tips over into complaining and ruminating.
Yeah.
And that's really that's the anatomy of anxiety. And it's about a worry about something that may or may not happen. It's a place where we're spinning out. And, it's almost like thinking about if you've ever seen a dog with a hot spot and they're licking, right? And you have to sort of break the pattern in that moment. And for me, when I'm in those lathers, that's a clear sign I'm in my head, or maybe I'm even like having an out of my mind experience, and I got to get back into my body. So I have to breathe, I have to cook, I have to go and work out, I have to just lie on the floor and moan. Like I have to get back into my body, which brings me back to that present moment. And the joke of the man jar, I think that's from a Bill Burr comedy special.
Perfect.
And so but it's not gender specific. It's literally like there are times when maybe your emotions will flood you out. And so that you can take them in doses.
Yes.
You don't want to make it so that the jar explodes. I remember one time when I was little and I was home by myself and I wasn't supposed to do this. I think I was 8 and I put Chef Boyardee ravioli in the oven in the can.
Yes, not optimal.
Oh my gosh. The oven door blew off and across the room, and there was ravioli like a death scene, like a murder, all over the walls.
Oh my God.
I was only left alone for a little bit.
Wow.
And that happened. And when my mother's coming home from working 2 jobs, and I've got a sponge making it so much worse. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I can imagine because I have an 8-year-old and I'm imagining her cleaning up this mess, and it would be an adventure.
It was a serious adventure. And so it's kind of like that jar. You can't let it get, I'm going to bring it back to the jar. You can't let it get that much pressure that it explodes.
Yeah, no, you can't.
Sometimes you don't have to feel it all.
I was so in the visual that I even forgot what we were talking about. I was just with the can of Chef Boyardee. Wow, that's intense. No, but it's true. And in nervous system world, we talk about titration, which is like small doable pieces, because the flooding, like you said, really can be too much. And if somebody does have a history of trauma, that can be re-traumatizing, actually, to feel so many things at the same time without the proper resources or support. So I love the feelings jar. Sometimes you just put the lid back on. It's great. Go for a walk. Lie on the ground and moan. I like your tool of lying on the ground and moaning. That one never occurred to me, but I'm adding it.
It's so good.
Adding it to my toolbox.
So good.
Yeah. Okay, so Kris Carr.
Ma'am.
This book has been out for a year. What have been some of the most beautiful conversations you've had, some of the most beautiful ways, meaningful ways that this has landed on people's hearts?
So many conversations that I've had. I think I've done probably about 100 or so interviews, and I was counting. I think
that's a lot.
I know.
Chris.
It's been fun, actually.
Wow, great
for the introvert.
Yeah,
I'm coming up.
Yeah. Oh my God, we played that song earlier.
Yes. Just to have heartfelt conversations and to go to deeper places with people, and to see, quite honestly, a lot of tears coming from the people who interview me and are willing to have the conversation, and meeting all these incredible humans where they are without the polish and without the walls that we put up. And then also having a lot of conversations with people after the fact saying, I didn't know I was going to need this. And then a few months later, my dog passed, or I lost my job, or I had a miscarriage. And so loss happens, as you said earlier, in so many different ways all throughout our days and lives. And I love manifesting, and I love all of the like spiritual candy. Do you know, like, who doesn't want to get high on spiritual candy? It's so fun.
Yeah.
Like, give me a dream planner all day long.
Absolutely.
And it's just fun. But I got to say that this is the work that really clears the way for the life you want to live and the life you want to create.
Yeah.
And so if you're afraid of having these conversations, this is a great guide. I'm funny. You know,
You are.
It's
one of my favorite things about you.
I try to make the medicine go down a little easier with joy and laughter, because it is my intention to really touch people.
Yeah.
I know that this book is the most important book I will ever write, and it changed me. So I'm so grateful to it. And I'm also grateful for every part of my life, even the difficult parts that allowed me to be who I am.
Yeah. Do you like ever talk to your dad? Do you feel him? Does he show up?
I do. I absolutely. That's why I say with faith, I'm fickle, feral, fluid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like every single day I'm changing what I feel about it. Yes, I have put, I mean, a lot of, after he died, I had a really profound moment where we were walking on the beach, my mom and I. He died on February 11th, and my cancer anniversary is February 14th, as you said. And so
a big week.
Yeah, it was really big. And that was my 20 year.
Wow.
And so I was only given 10 years. So it's a milestone. And yet I was in such deep grief. How can I celebrate my life when his life in physical form is over? So it was very, very difficult. And, he used to get us roses. And I remember Brian that morning on Valentine's Day said, should I get your mom roses? Is that weird? I don't know what to do. And him and Han, and he felt so uncomfortable. And I said, look, if you feel this uncomfortable, they're not yours to give. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so my mom and I went to the beach, and we went for this very long, we're still shell-shocked,
100%.
Even though his actual passing was quite beautiful. And we're walking further and further down the beach, and we're talking about him. And then I see these 2 red roses standing up in the sand. And I said to my mom, I'm like, Mom, oh my gosh, Mom. And we took pictures, and we just sat there for it felt like an hour. And it really felt like it was him. And so we took them back to the car, and we get to the car, and there's this little apartment complex, and I see this guy getting ready to watch a show on Netflix and getting into his lazy boy, and I'm looking up and peering into his apartment. Like, what are you watching? Have I seen that show? I like my shows. And it says Surviving Death. And you know what I mean? And I just said, okay, Dad. And so I talk to him all the time. I see him in all of the places that we used to go. Yeah. I bought a house here in Florida near my mom, and he got to spend time at the house. And he was also such a great businessman, and I always asked him advice, and I've continued to ask him advice. I put him in charge of HR because we had some HR issues. And he is a smooth operator. Like, he always knew what to say and how to say it. Uh-huh. And so I was like, you know what, you take this one, Dad. And he's helped me make some really big decisions.
That's so great.
Yeah. And whether or not it's him actually helping me make the decisions, or the idea of him, or the essence of him, the one thing I know is that energy never dies, it transforms. Mm-hmm. And he's made such a huge impact on me that I can summons him.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways I keep him alive. And I also keep him alive in this book.
Yeah. I really felt like I got to know him through the book. It was beautiful.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah. I love you, Kris.
I love you.
Thank you for being here. So obviously people should get themselves a copy of I'm Not a Mourning Person, as well as all your other books if they don't have them. I mean, they're amazing. But is there anywhere in particular people should come to connect with you? This will be out after your podcast is launched.
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
Oh my gosh, I'm finally doing it, Kate.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So many years of encouragement and cheerleading. I have my own podcast.
And it is called
Made to Thrive.
Which you are.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Made to Thrive. Okay. And then KrisCarr.com.
Yes. And all the places that books are sold.
Yeah.
I'm at Crazy Sexy Kris.
You are. Okay. Great.
Yes.
Yeah. At Crazy Sexy Kris. All the places books are sold. Get yourself a copy. I love you. Thank you for being here.
I love you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Plenty. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review. That's one of the best ways that you can ensure to spread the abundance of plenty with others. You can even text it to a friend and tell them to listen in. And if you want even more support to expand your abundance, head over to katenorthrup.com/breakthroughs, where you can grab my free money breakthrough guide that details the biggest money breakthroughs from some of the top earning women I know, plus a mini lesson accompanying it with my own biggest money breakthroughs and a nervous system healing tool for you to expand your abundance. Again, that's over at katenorthrup.com/breakthroughs. See you next time.